On September the 1st of 2016, 52-year-old Rhonda Oakley was at a work conference in Louisville, Kentucky, and she decided to leave early because her and her husband Philip had just been married a couple of years. They were still in the newlywed phase, and they didn't like to be apart. She reached her home in Junction City, Kentucky about 3 o'clock that afternoon. Recently, Rhonda had become a new stepmom to Philip's two children, Jenna, who was 15, and David, who was 13. They had moved in with them about 5 months ago after previously living with their mom in Indiana. And things seemed to be going great until that September day when Rhonda was found brutally murdered. I'm Melissa Compton, and this is Crimealytics. Rhonda Denise Raines was born on March the 5th of 1964 in Liberty, Kentucky, to Howard and Mabel. Rhonda, the single mother of 5, spent 30 years as a customer service manager at R.R. Donnelly, a company in Danville, Kentucky. And her co-workers described her as loving and kind and generous and fun. And the most important thing to her was making sure that everyone around her felt welcomed. For years, Rhonda's primary focus was on raising her children and making sure they had a stable home. Dating was the farthest thing from Rhonda's mind until 2008. By this time, Rhonda is 44 years old, her children are grown, and she finally has time for herself. So she decides to open up her heart and try to find love again. Rhonda was at the Old Bridge Golf Club bar when she met 37-year-old Philip Oakley. Rhonda was outgoing and lively and extroverted, and Philip was the complete opposite. He was introverted, introspective, and quiet. But despite their differences, they became inseparable. Philip was a production supervisor, and he was also divorced. He was still raising his young children part-time. Philip's two children, Jenna and David, lived in Arlington, Indiana with their mother, Christy Wood Poe. Now that is about a 3-hour drive one way from Junction City, Kentucky. And despite having to be on the road 6 hours both ways, Philip did not care. He made that trip every other weekend and treasured the time that he spent with his children because he absolutely loved them. Rhonda embraced her role as their stepmom. She did everything she could to put them first and make sure that they felt at home and safe. Philip and Rhonda got married on December 27th of 2013 in a quiet, intimate ceremony. And they embraced their new life together, initially focusing on work and just being newlyweds. Philip and Rhonda had 3 dogs, Cinderella, Jonas, and Oliver, and she had a very strong bond with these dogs, but not as strong as she had with her grandchildren. She had 4 grandchildren and 1 on the way.
Her children and grandchildren, she loved them so much.
Junction City, Kentucky, where Rhonda and Philip lived for more than 20 years, is a very small town outside of Danville, Kentucky. It has a population of less than 2,300 people, so it's one of those places where you can say everybody knew everybody. In April of 2016, 2 years into their marriage, Philip's 15-year-old daughter told him she was having a lot of trouble and conflicts with her mom and asked if she could move in with them. Now, Philip had told her several times before that if she ever wanted to come live with him that she could. So when she asked, he kept his promise and she moved in. Now, Rhonda was very happy about this and very supportive. And then soon after, her 13-year-old brother David followed suit, and he moved in as well. Philip and Rhonda really started focusing on the kids to make sure they had a safe and stable home and that they felt supported during this transition. Moving is hard on adults, but it can be even more so on children when they are in a new home, new schools, and have a new social circle. But Jenna and David seem to be adjusting very well. David had activities he was doing in school and he was having a lot of fun. And Jenna excelled academically and she was a cheerleader at Boyle County High School. Philip was so grateful and thankful about how Rhonda treated his children and her stepchildren. She treated them like they were her own. And in an interview he gave with WDRB News later, he said, "If there was a book written about the perfect wife, the perfect mother, the perfect nana, that would be my wife. I know she made me a better person. She changed my life. On September the 1st, David came home from school about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and he was the only one there, which is what would be expected. Jenna was still at school, his dad was still at work, and his stepmom wasn't expected to be home from that conference until a little bit later. Before starting his homework, David loads the dishwasher, which is one of his chores, and as he's doing this, he realizes the dogs are barking, and he's not quite sure where they are in the house until he realizes the sound is coming from the basement, so he heads downstairs. Their basement had 2 bedrooms. One was Jenna's and one was a spare bedroom. And outside of the spare bedroom, the dogs are barking incessantly. They're whining, they're crying, almost screaming, trying to get into that room. When David opened that spare bedroom door and switched on that light, Rhonda was laying motionless on the basement floor. David immediately ran from the house and to a neighbor's where they called 911 for him. When officers arrived on the scene, they found Rhonda had been stabbed multiple times in her neck. Her face was covered with a trash bag and duct tape sealed her mouth. When they went into Jenna's room, they noticed a trash can near the doorway that someone had vomited in. And there was no weapon found at the scene, but when they went to the upstairs kitchen, they realized that one of the knives was missing. When Philip pulled into the driveway after leaving work, he was overcome with dread. He didn't know what he was going to find. David had called him earlier, and all he could say because he was so upset was, "Daddy, Rhonda's gone." And then when he sees all of the flashing lights from the emergency vehicles, it confirmed his fears. His son was standing outside, and Kentucky State Police came up to him and told him that Rhonda had been killed. Philip was devastated. Rhonda wasn't just his wife, she was his best friend, and she was a loving stepmother to his children, so he could not figure out who would do this and why. But things looked kind of weird at the scene to everyone. There were no signs of forced entry, so it didn't seem like it was a random robbery or anything like that. It seemed like it might have been planned. And Rhonda's white 2014 Honda Civic was gone from the driveway, so authorities issued a BOLO. And then everyone realized 15-year-old Jenna was also missing. As police started to investigate, they had to rule people out. First, there was David. Well, he was in school, so he had nothing to do with it. Then there was Philip, and Philip had been at work all day, so they cleared him. But he did tell the police that earlier that day he received a notification from Bull County High School that Jenna hadn't showed up for school. And at first, he thought maybe she was homesick. But now, Philip and the officers became worried that maybe Jenna witnessed the murder and she had been abducted because of it. Hours passed and there was still no sign of Jenna, and Philip said that he had a gut feeling and decided to share it with police. He pointed to Jenna's ex-boyfriend, Kenneth Nye, who was 20 years old and from Arlington, Indiana. Now, Kenneth and Jenna started dating years before when she lived with her mom in Arlington, and they first met on the school bus when he was 17 and she was 12. When Philip and Rhonda found out about the relationship once Jenna moved to Kentucky, they acted quickly. They told her she couldn't talk to him anymore. They took her phone and blocked communications with him. And then Philip had a one-on-one conversation with Kenny. And he told him, "If you do not stop contacting my daughter, I will involve law enforcement." And that seemed to work. Both Kenny and Jenna understood how serious it was, and they both agreed that they would stop communicating and the relationship would end. After Philip gave this information about his daughter and Kenny to police, they focused on trying to find them. They looked into Kenny's background and saw that after he finished high school, he joined the Army and was stationed at Fort Carson, Colorado, where military records showed that he was active duty. Frank Thornberry was a Kentucky State Police detective and a former Marine, so he contacted Fort Carson about Kenny. And what they told him was Kenny had recently filed to leave the Army, claiming conscientious objector status. Now, what this means is someone can ask to leave the Army because they refuse to participate in military service of any kind, including combat and bearing arms, due to a deeply held moral, ethical, or religious belief. But instead of waiting, Kenny decided to take a quicker way out. He purposefully failed his fitness exam, which led to a dishonorable discharge on August the 31st, which was one day before Rhonda's death. After his discharge, the Army bought Kenny a plane ticket back to Indiana and dropped him at the airport. But his ticket was switched at the last minute, and at 3:30 p.m., Kenny shows up at Bluegrass Airport in Lexington, Kentucky, which is about 50 miles from Danville. Airport security footage showed Kenny leaving his gate and heading to the rideshare area, and investigators were able to piece together his movements using surveillance video, but then they hit a snag when he chose an Uber over a cab. But still yet, they were able to confirm that Kenny was in Kentucky, and they had a recent image of him at the airport. Detectives shared information about 15-year-old Jenna Oakley with the news media, and while there wasn't an Amber Alert, the media spread the word. And due to their efforts, an Uber driver reported a lead on Kenneth Nye. The Uber driver said he picked up someone named Kenny from the airport, and Kenny had told him that he was fresh out of the Army and that he was visiting friends nearby. But when the Uber driver went to drop him off, he thought it was odd because Kenny didn't want to be let out in front of the house. He wanted to be let out down the street because he said it was going to be a surprise. That street was Old Houstonville Road where the Oakleys lived, and it was the night of August the 31st, one day before Rhonda's murder. Detectives tracked Kenny's phone in hopes that it would lead to Jenna and confirm that she was safe. But soon the phone pinged in Glasgow, which is about 100 miles southwest of Danville. Authorities had already issued an alert for Jenna, and then they expanded it to include Kenny. The phone's location kept changing. Its signal popped up near I-65 close to Nashville, Tennessee. But investigators faced delays because Kenny kept turning the phone on and off, causing gaps of up to 45 minutes, and this made tracking the exact route nearly impossible. The next day, a lead came in about Jenna. A Walmart manager in Danville reported seeing her on September the 1st, and surveillance footage confirmed it. She was with Kenny, and he was wearing the same shirt he had on at the airport. And the video showed them entering the Walmart during the day, likely soon after Rhonda's death. Jenna didn't seem hurt or upset or like she was being held against her will. She seemed calm, and she was walking with Kenny like nothing was wrong. At one point, she even touched his arm affectionately. And then after leaving the store, they got into a car that resembled Rhonda's missing Honda and drove off. Jenna's calmness on the footage brought mixed emotions and a lot of questions. Her family and detectives were relieved she was safe, but there was a lot of questions that remained. She was so calm. Did she know about Rhonda's murder? Was she involved? And why hadn't she contacted her dad after she left home? Looking for answers to these questions, officers searched Jenna's room to see what they could find, and they stumbled across her journal. One entry dated July the 7th read, "I just got done talking to him a few moments ago, and I feel so much better than what I did. The latest we will be together is August the 20th. I really can't wait. Every doubt that I've had these days are gone. I love him so much, and I know he loves me too." The he she mentioned in her journal was Kenneth Nye, and despite what they had told Rhonda and Philip, they never stopped communicating, and the relationship had never ended. Jenna believed her bond with Kenny was strong, and Kenny seemed to be set on making it work. She didn't care what her father and her stepmother thought, and in another chilling journal entry, she wrote, They'll be dead soon, thankfully. Then they found in the journal that Jenna had created a detailed bullet list breaking down her plan into clear step-by-step actions. And she didn't overlook anything. And it said, kill Philip first between 4 a.m. and 5 a.m. 2 knives prepared with me. Kill David last. Kill Rhonda second between 6 a.m. and 8 a.m. Kill David in his room. Ask Philip to go downstairs real quick. Then, as we're going down, slice his neck in the front. Walk into Rhonda's bedroom and stab her. Stab David in his bed. Then she added, let him know about my plan, have a bag packed and prepared, have a knife prepared, stab them. So here we have an intricate list or a murder plan of how she's going to carry this out. Not just Rhonda, but her father and her brother, and let him know about my plan is absolutely her telling Kenneth Nye what is going on and getting him involved. The disturbing coldness revealed in Jenna's journal left Philip unable to believe that she was innocent. He couldn't shake the certainty that she played a role in Rhonda's death. But how involved was she? Did she kill Rhonda? Did Kenny kill Rhonda? Or did they both do it? Or what exactly happened? He didn't know. On September the 2nd, investigators tracked Kenny's phone, and he and Jenna were moving quickly. They were heading west across Tennessee, Arkansas, and into Oklahoma. But by September the 3rd, their progress abruptly stopped. They had traced the phone, which appeared to have stayed in the same spot for some amount of time, but now they were over 1,000 miles away in Tucumcari, New Mexico. So Kentucky State Police alerted the local authorities, which began searching for Rhonda's Honda and the 2 fugitives. And Kenny's phone activity pointed to a truck stop, so officers moved in quickly. That evening, Corporal Cody Birch was patrolling near a Motel 6 on Route 66 Boulevard when he saw a car matching that description. As he got closer and looked in the car with his flashlight, he saw a young couple inside who were asleep. The girl was laying over on the boy, totally relaxed, like nothing was wrong. But at the moment his flashlight shined in her eyes, she jolted up and got into the driver's seat, prepared to take off. Officer Birch asked her to lower her window, but instead she started the car, so he drew his weapon. Now, he kept it kind of low so he didn't startle them too much, and he kept the situation kind of under control, but he had drawn his weapon nonetheless. And through the window, he could see the boy talking to the girl, trying to keep her from panicking, and finally the engine shut off. When backup arrived, Kenny and Jenna were taken into custody without incident. Kenny seemed to come to terms with what was happening, but Jenna not so much. She was freaking out, she was crying, and she made sure the officers knew that Kenny Nye was her boyfriend. Officer Birch later said that Jenna kept repeating the same request. Please tell Kenny I love him. Make sure he knows I love him. So it almost seems like she was more concerned with the fact that she wanted Kenny to know she loved him versus she's being arrested and she's a fugitive. Kenny faced charges of contributing to the delinquency of a minor, and both of them were accused of possessing stolen property for the car. Jenna was sent to a juvenile detention center while Kenny was booked into the Qua County Jail. On September the 5th, Philip was stunned to learn that Kenny had reportedly posted bond and been released from jail. But Kentucky State Police investigated and clarified that Kenny had not been released from jail, but he had been transferred to a Texas hospital in critical condition. Hours after arriving in jail, Kenny attempted suicide by hanging himself with a blanket. And though he was still alive, he was on life support. And inside his jail cell, they found a note that said, I, Kenneth Nye, admit to killing Rhonda Oakley. Jenna had nothing to do with it. She wasn't in the house when I killed Rhonda. I take full responsibility. I'm truly sorry. While the note cleared Jenna of any involvement, it completely clashed and contradicted with what she had written in her journal. And at this point in time, detectives and authorities decided not to tell her that Kenny had tried to kill himself and that he was in the hospital in critical condition. On September the 12th, Jenna was extradited back to Kentucky where she was read her rights, and then Philip allowed her to be interviewed, and Jenna confessed. She admitted that her relationship with Kenny had never ended and that they stayed in touch using a friend's cell phone while she was at school. She also revealed Kenny had taken an Uber to her house and stayed with her the night before Rhonda was murdered. And then she said that she went to the kitchen and retrieved the knife to be used the next day. As Philip went to work and David left for school, Kenny was hiding out in Jenna's room, and then she stayed home and they spent the day downstairs in the basement just keeping each other company. They were startled at 3 p.m. when Rhonda returned home earlier than they thought, so Kenny jumped into the closet and hid so Rhonda wouldn't see him. Rhonda had a laundry basket in her hand when she headed downstairs, and she went into Jenna's room. Now, she was surprised when she saw that Jenna was there in her room and not in school. So she asked her, "Why are you not in school?" The exchange quickly escalated into a heated argument, and then it turned physical. Jenna told the detectives that she could tell her stepmother was going to get confrontational, so acting impulsively, she started attacking her stepmother. But then she said she realized she needed help because Rhonda was much bigger than her, so that's the point that Kenny came out of the closet and tried to help her. Jenna's account of Rhonda's murder appeared cold and detached and like it was really no big deal to Detective Throneberry. And he mentioned that usually when they question juveniles, there is a lot of emotion. They're scared, they're sad, they're freaking out, but not with Jenna. She was totally calm and flat. Jenna told the detectives they took Rhonda's car, stopped at the gas station, and dumped the weapon in the trash. She briefly cried and told the detective, "I guess you hear this a lot," and when he asked her what she meant, she said, "I'm sorry." But her emotions quickly disappeared. She was crying, "I'm sorry," and then, like a light switch, her emotions completely went away and she was back to being calm and flat. Philip waited until Jenna was in custody to reach out. He had a lot of questions, and when he confronted her about Rhonda's death, she admitted everything. And he asked her point blank, "Why didn't you leave with Kenny? Why did Rhonda have to die?" And Jenna's answers were vague, defensive, and they didn't satisfy him at all. He still had a lot of questions. Then he asked her the hardest question a father would ever have to ask his daughter. "Did you plan to kill me too?" And Jenna told him yes. And then she told him she had also planned to kill 13-year-old David as well. As Philip and Jenna talked, she became very frustrated, and she kept repeatedly asking him, "What do you want from me?" Make no mistake, Philip was furious as well. His daughter's vague response when he asked her questions of, "It's hard to explain," well, that didn't cut it for him. That didn't give him any answers to why his wife was brutally murdered. And he couldn't accept it, and he wouldn't accept it, especially from his own child. Rhonda Raines Oakley was buried on September the 7th after a memorial service was held at Southland Christian Church in Danville, Kentucky. Her obituary listed, of course, her husband, her children, their spouses, her stepson David, 5 young grandchildren, even her dogs, but not surprisingly, there was no mention of Jenna. On October the 20th, a Boyle Circuit Court grand jury charged Jenna Oakley with complicity to commit murder and theft. She was going to be tried as an adult. Her boyfriend, Kenneth, already facing charges for harboring a minor, died days before her indictment without regaining consciousness. But Jenna doesn't know this yet, and she won't know it for a little bit longer. At her December arraignment, Jenna pleaded not guilty, and that's when they told her the truth. They told her that her boyfriend Kenny had been in a coma since their arrest and that he had passed away. And the news hit her hard. According to reports, she screamed so loud that you could hear it down the hallway in the courthouse. At a January 2019 pretrial hearing, officers described Jenna's behavior on her return to Kentucky, and her defense attorneys were doing their best to have her confession thrown out.
Today in court, there were tense moments between Jenna's lawyers and the lead detective on the case, and it makes sense why. Police have a recording of Jenna's first interview with them, and the judge said there is a possible confession on that tape. So Jenna's lawyers are trying to convince the judge to throw that tape out because they believe police violated Jenna's rights, like having a lawyer present, in order to get that confession.
For 2 years, Jenna stayed in a juvenile facility receiving mental health treatments while her defense team looked into her past. They wanted to understand how a 15-year-old could commit such a chilling crime. The Commonwealth's Attorney's Office was trying to figure out how to handle the conflicting confessions. On one hand, you have Kenny saying that he was solely responsible, Jenna didn't know what was going to happen, and she had nothing to do with it. On the other hand, you have the journal, and you have Jenna on tape with Kenny after Rhonda was murdered. So you can look at it either way, and the appearance can be that they're going to say whatever they have to say to protect the other person. The judge had decided Jenna would be tried as an adult, but the prosecutors were concerned the jury might not see it that way. Jenna was 15 at the time, and some things came up about her past that might sway their decision, so they decided to offer her a plea deal. She would plead guilty to first-degree manslaughter and theft for Rhonda's car. Her sentence would be 10 years for the killing of Rhonda and 5 years for stealing the car. Jenna Pauline Wood Oakley was just shy of her 18th birthday when she pled guilty on January the 14th of 2019 to first-degree manslaughter and theft by taking. A few weeks later, at a pre-sentencing hearing before Boyle Circuit Judge Darren Peckler, she expressed regret.
My incarceration has struck me with so many losses. Most of my friends, all of my family, and especially my stepmother. I cannot tell you how very sorry I am that I did not try to save her that day almost 2.5 years ago. I'm also sorry for all of the pain, hurt, anger, and frustration that it has caused.
And Jenna Oakley's father, Philip Oakley, was also in the courtroom this morning. He says when he heard his daughter read that letter, that's the first time he's ever heard her say, "I'm sorry."
So with that statement, despite her plea, she is still not taking responsibility. She is sticking to her claim that she didn't kill Rhonda, that Kenny did it, but she is guilty for not stopping him. During allocution, usually the defendants will admit their actions and explain them to try to seek some sort of leniency. That's not what happened with Jenna. Jenna faced up to 15 years in prison, and the court considered 3 options. She could do probation or conditional discharge, treatment through the Department of Juvenile Justice, or state prison. Her defense attorney pushed for treatment over incarceration, but her dad disagreed.
Well, I think they've had 2 years and 2.5 years to seek treatment if they wanted treatment. I don't understand why all of a sudden now they think this is the time for her to get treatment. I sent her to treatment, to Charter Ridge and the Brook and places to get her help. That obviously didn't help. So she needs to go to prison. That's what she deserves.
Were you expecting to see a sentence today?
Well, I knew that I didn't know how it works since she's still not 18, so I didn't know what type of sentence. I didn't know. I actually didn't know what would happen, but I guess that should happen. 27.
In March, at Jenna's final sentencing, new details emerged about how concerned Rhonda and Philip were about Jenna's behavior months before Rhonda was killed. At school, Jenna came across as polite and well-liked, but at home, she was a completely different person. She defied the rules, she challenged authority, and she refused to cooperate and do anything that they asked her to do. But Philip didn't let Jenna off the hook. He said, "I want to know why you did what you did. Myself nor Rhonda ever abused you. There was no better person on this earth than Rhonda. You didn't have a right to do what you did. Kenny didn't know our address, so you had to tell him. You had to let him in the house. You're saying you wish you could have stopped it, Jenna. You are not a victim. You're a victimizer." His words to his daughter were direct and fueled by anger and betrayal. He demanded accountability, and he was unwilling to ignore the weight of her choices. When the judge handed down his sentence, both Philip and the prosecution got what they wanted. Judge Peer gave Jenna the maximum, 15 years on both counts, with credit for time served.
It was particularly cruel. It was senseless. It was even callous in that regard.
There are a lot of questions and debates surrounding Jenna's sentence. There are people on one side of the table that say, given her age and her tough background, that the sentence is too harsh. In Jenna's family, even her father believes the sentence is far too short. Jenna is currently serving out her sentence at the Kentucky Correctional Institute for Women in Pewee Valley, and she's eligible for release as early as April of 2027, when she will be 26 years old. Not everyone agrees with the idea of her being released early. Many still believe that 15 years is not enough time for the crimes committed. If she does serve her full sentence, she'd stay incarcerated until August of 2031, when she turns 30 years old. That's it for today. Let me know your thoughts below, and don't forget to like and subscribe so that you get updates and new cases as they're released. And you can catch the podcast on Amazon, Apple, Spotify, and more. Have a case suggestion? There's a link down in the description. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Until then, stay safe out there.